Our focus today has to do with what has data got to do with housing. This is a very important matter in Nigeria housing sector. At various times, the Minister for Housing has disputed the figure of the housing deficit in Nigeria. A lot of people have come with efforts to collect the data. This is the period of COVID-19, when this information of data are very crucial and important in our policy formulation. Today, I'm privileged to have my guests who are very important personalities in the Africa housing industry. I have with me here Keisha Rost, all the way from South Africa. He will be talking to us today. Keisha Rost is the Executive Director and founder of the Center for Affordable Housing Finance in Africa. She is a housing policy specialist and has worked with both public and private sector practitioners in promoting access to affordable housing and housing finance in Africa for the past 20 years. Center for Housing Finance is the Secretariat of the African Union for Housing Finance. So it's my pleasure having you, Keisha Rost, as a guest on this program today. I also have with me this afternoon Reverend Surveyor Ugo Chukwushime, a former chairman of Nigerian Institution of Surveyors, Enugu State Chapter, a former chairman of Enugu Chamber of Commerce and Industry, a former chairman of Enugu State Housing Corporation, and immediate past president of Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria. Surveyor Reverend Ugo Chukwushime, we are happy to have you on the program today.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you, my fellow panelists. Glad to be here.
I also have with me this afternoon Dr. Mike Umba, who is the head real estate sector statistics in the Statistics Department of the Central Bank of Nigeria. He is the coordinator of the Technical Working Data Collation and Management Program, a position he has held since May 2017. So it's my pleasure to welcome you on the program today, Dr. Mike Umba.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Festus. I'm glad to be here, and then also glad to see other panelists. Very nice having all of you this afternoon to discuss this topic. Thank you.
You're welcome. Also with me this afternoon is Dr. Joshua Igbagbe, a Nigerian born from Edo State. Joshua, formerly called Sisters, trained in Russia as a medical doctor and did postgraduate data-driven studies in public health management with emphasis on how socioeconomic conditions impact on the health of children and on the sustainable development of a nation. Dr. Joshua Igbagbe, an entrepreneur by default, as he loves to call himself, is a member of Nigerian Institute of Management and also member of Nigeria Institute of Credit Administration. Joshua's passion for off-takers affordability, profiling, and strategic ownership market empowerment through a value chain-based and data-driven approach is based on his experience as a real estate developer, developing the large 500-unit mass housing project in Bauchi State. Dr. Joshua, we're happy to have you on the program this afternoon.
Thank you, Festus. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to be with you all. And I can see my very great fellow panelists. I am happy to be part of this. God bless you. And I pray that the program will indeed be very fruitful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ibabi. It's my pleasure to also recognize my guest speaker, Dr. Roland Igbinoba, the founder of Pricing Housing Company Nigeria, members of the Technical Committee, Mortgage Sector of the Financial System Strategy, FS 2020, former Managing Director, CEO, Federal Housing, FHA Mortgage Bank, Federal Housing Authority Mortgage Bank, and former Deputy President of the Mortgage Banking Association of Nigeria. Dr. Roland has worked at UBA, United Bank of Africa, Eco Bank of Nigeria, and National Bank of Nigeria. He has produced many publications that have to do with data in Nigeria, both for Lagos and also for Abuja. It's my pleasure to welcome you on this program. Dr. Roland. Dr. Roland.
Thank you very much, Festus, for having me.
Now, but last but not the least, my brother and a highly respected IT consultant, Mr. Taufik Latiwo. He has MSc Civil Engineering, University of Lagos, Master of Business Administration, Management and Finance, Western USA, work at Shell International for 18 years, Cambridge, Canada, Hewlett-Packard, America, that is known for IT in North and South America, traveled widely and loved the game of chess. He is at present the head of IT and business operation at the Nigerian Mortgage Finance Company of Nigeria. So it's our pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you so much, my brother. It's great to be here. I'm glad to be amongst the great people on this panel. Thank you so much.
For all our speakers, all our participants that are watching this program, our speakers will be talking for the first time for 4 minutes. After the 4 minutes round, we now begin to use questions from the audience to move the discussion forward. You are therefore advised to send in your questions. We promise we do justice to them. As I have said, the issue we are discussing today is very, very, very important. And I will be starting with no other person today, former president of Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria, Surveyor Ugochukwu Shime, to tell us, Reverend Shime, are you here?
I'm here.
We want to hear from you. We'd like to hear from you today. What efforts has your organization made when you were the president of HDAN in getting a standard data for housing policy development in this country? Nigerians would like to hear.
Thank you so much, Mr. Festus, and I want to appreciate in depth my colleagues who have labored with me over the past years on this issue of data for the Nigerian real estate sector. The Nigerian Real Estate Data Collection and Management Program came on board in 2017 as a result of a very simple request from Central Bank of Nigeria to Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria to give them some data on property pricing across the whole country to enable them do some work in that regard. In response to that effort, HDAN decided that it would be better for us to work collaboratively with institutions that need data so that we will not work in silos and duplicate effort and expenses, and in so doing, deepen the knowledge of the critical desk officers in our various departments and various institutions on the issue of real estate data. It was that response by HDAN to CBN Danan led CBN and the Department of Statistics in CBN by Dr. Tumala and working in conjunction with Dr. Mba, that we now decided to invite other stakeholders. And that invitation was extended, and in response, we had, apart from Central Bank of Nigeria, Real Estate Development Association of Nigeria, we had Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, Nigerian Mortgage Finance Company, we had Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, we had National Population Commission, we had James 3 projects, and other institutions, Mortgage Bankers Association of Nigeria, Building Material Producers Association of Nigeria, and later Family Homes Fund, in conjunction with pricing housing and then value chain, whose CEOs are here. We decided that instead of working in silo, we shall articulate together our real estate needs, real estate data needs, funnel it into one questionnaire, and administer it as one group. And then when we have gotten it, we'll be able to collate it, analyze it, and each section will take away the data that is relevant to their operations, and then our very other sector interest of data that they need concerning the Nigerian real estate environment, and enable them to now be able to have data for planning and the rest of them. That was the origin of that Nigerian real estate data collection and management program. We also decided that we're going to have 2 layers of organization. We have the technical working group being heavily led by Dr. Mike Mba over the years. And then we'll have the steering committee, which comprised of the key directors, the director of PPP in the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, the key director in the Federal Mortgage Bank, NMRC, and other institutions who will now superintend as the policy organ. And that committee, the steering committee, was headed by myself. It's still headed by myself. And that is what we have put in place. Then we decided furthermore that we'll have 4 segments for this data. We'll have number 1 to be the housing condition survey, to be able to know the existing condition from which we can derive issues of deficit, know the condition in which the Nigerian masses are living in, and how they are challenged with respect to housing. That is the housing condition survey. The second aspect we decided to look at also was the issue of land administration across 37 land administration entities in Nigeria. That is 36 states and FCT. What are they? Because under the Land Use Act, they have total authority on fiscal development. And therefore, and since every development is on land, they determine the character of issues that emanate because of that control they have over land and land transaction dynamics, policies, and practices in their states. So that is the second aspect, the land administration survey. The third one we decided to look at is the issue of the business survey that determines who are the organizations who are involved in the real estate sector, whether they are mortgage operating on the supply side or they're operating on the demand side. We need to know where they are so that we can articulate where the people who are supposed to service the needs of Nigerians are. That is the business survey. And what are their capabilities, and what are their competencies, and what are their potentials. So that if we are going to have a project intervention like we have the CDM project, we know who can serve where and all the rest of the issues. Then the final element, which is the key one actually, is the affordability survey, to be able to look at where the Nigerians who are looking for these houses are. What can they afford? What can they accept? And what are their conditions upon which they will accept it? So the affordability survey enables us to know what they can afford. So these were the 4 segments that we put in place. And that was what we went into the field with, and we are able to deal precisely with the first 3 segments of affordability, business survey, and land administration. And not yet, Central Bank of Nigeria is doing the housing conditions survey, and Dr. Mba has been working on that. That is what we decided to do. And last year, 2019, we were able to, for the first time, launch out our product. If you go to the website of Nigerian Mortgage Finance Company, which avail to us their website to hoist the data, hmip.nmrc.com.ng/nmrc/nrdc_survey. You see our data there, and you also see the survey form we have in place. That is where we are. But we then moved forward, saying that going forward, we saw the competency that we have been able to develop among the desk officers And I'd like to appreciate once more my colleagues who are here. I'd like to appreciate Dr. Mba, appreciate Joshua, appreciate Roland, and then TK, and the rest of the others who are not able to be here, like Madam UK, Ria. They were able to work hard and show that these organizations working together, we can reduce the cost of housing and going for cost of getting data, which is critical. Across the Nigerian space, we have had a mismatch between needs and supply. We have had situations where some estates were sited in the wrong place because of the pricing techniques. We have had situations like in Abuja, where we have had a preponderance of high-end housing without the adequate data that we have guided the developers and guided even the FCDA in giving approvals. So we saw that there were a lot of issues that we can glean from the data we had. And that is what we have been able to do. Furthermore, when we now saw the mechanics of what we can do, we further decided as Nigerian Real Estate Data Collection and Management Program that we are going to bring out a new approach to what we are doing. We will now have anchor institutions. These institutions will be responsible for certain aspects of the survey with the technical support and guidance and participation of all the stakeholders. We decided that the housing condition survey, which is being heavily done by CBN, could be enlarged, could be upscaled, and have the involvement of the Federal Ministry of Works, the anchor of CBN, working in collaboration with Federal Ministry of Works and Housing. Number two, the issue of Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria has about 5 million contributors to the National Housing Fund. That is a large pool from which we can do this survey, and they already have their data. So these two organizations were entrusted as the anchor for building this land appreciation survey will be under the purview of NMIC because they have already gained milestones. They're already ahead of other institutions because of what they have done in mortgage, modern mortgage and foreclosure law in conjunction with the National Housing Finance Program of CBN. So that is what we have designed, and that is what we're going to do going forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reverend Shimon. Thank you so much. Issue of data, as I said, is very, very important. And I would like to go to Dr. Mba, who has been working on data for many years, over 18 years of experience in data production. So please, for the benefit of people, we just got people that are key now, are very important personality, key stakeholders in Nigeria and other countries. I can see people from South Africa here. I can see somebody from Morocco. So please tell us, why is data collation, production so important? Why do we need it in the housing sector? Dr. Mba, why do we need data? What is the relevance? What is the importance? Especially at this time that intervention is coming. Why do we need it? Dr. Mba, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you, Festus. So it's a critical question in every aspect of life and also in policy. And so for the housing sector, data is critical because we need to understand, one, we need to start from knowing where we are and then be able to set goals of where we are going. And data is what you will use along the way to know whether you are getting to where you're going and getting there on time. And so, okay, I give you an example of part of the data we've been talking about for the housing sector. There has been so much talk about what is the housing deficit. Let me just tell you, given the population of the country estimated at close to 200 million, and then we have established also that the average household size in Nigeria is 5 persons. Now, if you divide 200 million by 5, which is to get the number of households that needs to have a house, you have 40 million. So you need 40 million housing units to house each household of 5 persons in Nigeria. Now, from also surveys that we have done at household level, we have seen that about 60% of households in Nigeria had reported that they own their own houses. Well, I will come to the quality of the house that they have. But the 60%, that means we can be saying that we have about 24 million houses, being used by households. And then we have a shortfall from the 40 million we require to give 5 persons per household, a good accommodation. We're still looking for 16 million. Now, be that as it may, when from the same household surveys, both from the World Bank and the CBN, we also found out that 50% of those houses that are owned by households, more than 50% of it are of low quality. They are mud houses, traditional huts. So when you take out that low quality houses, that means you are getting about 12 million again that you need to replace. Add 12 million to 16 million deficit that you already have, you are talking about 28 million. Now, the next question is, what type of house do they need? If you're to provide 28 million houses, what type? In what location? So, and that is why we're getting to know where we are, and that was why, like Reverend Chime mentioned, the baseline survey on housing conditions that we have always been proposing that we're going to conduct is funding that have not allowed us to do that, is what we need to understand where we are now, so that all the interventions, any intervention you're going to bring up, including the ones that will flow in from foreign investment and domestic investment, we'll be able to say, oh, this is where we are. So you see that this data, putting it in a bucket and monitoring it over time will help us to understand where are we going. Well, at what point do we need to say, oh, we have achieved what we set out at the beginning? That's exactly how critical data is. And then also, when you now come to the area of financing, you begin to get data to know who can afford what type of house. Do you go and build duplex for everybody? Can they afford it? Can they pay for it? The affordability snapshot we did showed that more than 70% of Nigerian workers earn 100,000 or below. And so those are the data that we need to see, and it will throw up both for the investor and for the government to know where we are going and whether we are getting there. Thank you.
Dr. Oba, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm happy you have mentioned these very crucial issues. What type of houses, at where, who need what, and what type of houses can people even afford? Where do they really want the houses? I was in Ekiti State at a particular time in Nigeria. I saw houses vacant, nobody living in them, because they're not the kind of the houses that those people in that area were in need of. The same thing is happening everywhere. What is the way forward? How do we address this problem? How do we sort it out? Let me go to Mr. Taufik of Nigeria Mortgage Finance. As said by Reverend Shime and Dr. Mba, they said NMRC has been hosting the data that they collated. Please, can you give us detailed information on the kind of data that you have, and who are the kind of people that need to go there for any purpose?
Thank you very much, my brother Festus. So as we are aware, NMRC started full operations 2015. And when we started full operations, we realized that one of the major challenges would be the issue of understanding the market itself. So because NMRC is in to provide affordable housing and to give access to finance for our people so that we can provide liquidity to the mortgage banks, we said the key people would be the people that are making the demand. So we started looking at the demand and the supply of housing in order to stimulate the market. And we realized very quickly that we would have to go back to the basics to gather data so that we won't be working based on the rule of thumb or off the cuff kind of decision making to a more strategic data-driven decision making for us. And this takes us back to the key phrase around data is the new oil, because the oil will dry up, but data will keep growing, and data would be what we can use for strategic decision making for us to be able to provide housing that will be affordable with access to finance for our people. Now, I want to give us a teaser before going forward. I want to make 2 assumptions. Let's assume that we truly have 20 million deficit in terms of housing, and we agree that the average to build a house is between 2 million to 4 million, like just looking at the baseline. What does that translate to in terms of the budget? So that means we're looking at a market of about over 80 trillion naira. So that's the size of the market. If we know the size of the market, are we going to use the rule of thumb to develop this market, or are we going to use data-driven environment to do it? And that's where I'm going to come from. Now, we looked at that and we said we must gather the data. Then we started looking at, okay, how do we do it? Just gathering data is not enough. We have to have a place to keep it. We have to have a way to analyze it. We have to have a way to digest it and to pass on the information so that we have the matching between house demand and house supply. So we started working with the Nigerian Housing Finance Program team at CBN and the National Bureau of Statistics, together with some other few organizations, to pull data together from 2016. And within a year, we were able to identify, to do the pilot in six regions. So we did in Lagos for the Southwest. We did in Abuja to cover the North Central. We did in Kano for Northwest. We had another one in Yola for Northeast, Enugu for Southeast, and Rivers for South-South. So we put all of this data together, focusing on the 3 key themes of household, the administration, as well as the financial aspect, very similar to the concept of NRE DCMP that my dear President, Reverend Ugochukwu, already mentioned earlier on. So we did these, and that really helped us to understand at least the foundation of the market. And with this foundation, we started talking about it, and we now eventually metamorphosed into the Nigerian Real Estate Data Collection and Management Program, of which CBN, Department of Statistics, came in, and we looked at the entire market again. And this has been the contribution from NMRC in terms of how to move data forward. We've been taking the lead. We're glad that we already have a portal in place to do this. But beyond looking at just Nigeria, we decided to partner with CAF, that's the Center for Affordable Housing Finance Program. Kesia is going to talk more about that, so I don't want to steal the thunder from her on that. But these are some of the strategic ways we've been looking at how do we build the housing markets using very important data, the underlying data, to be data-driven. How do we build the market for our people? Because ultimately, this is the way we would be able to define the matching between the housing demand and the housing supply. It also helps us to understand the economy of the environment in terms of job creation. So I talked about 20 million housing deficit that we have. And we all know that we've got about 60 people that can be employed to build a home. Let's say, for the sake of argument, we've got about 25,000 homes we're building every year, and we multiply by 60. That creates 1.5 million jobs every year. So there are so many dimensions to having homes for our people. One, you have shelter, which is the basic need of life. And 2, there's job creation, which gives them some means of livelihood. It helps in terms of how people really live together. Now, the data we're collating now will also help us in terms of the exact areas where we put the intervention for our people. Let's look at what's happening now, COVID-19. With clear data from housing, we'll be able to tell exactly where the point of intervention should go to for our people. We should be working hand in hand with the National Social Register so that we can all, have a clear-cut approach for the prevention of any kind of disease, illness, whatever comes up. But essentially, we have to go this way. We have to ensure that we are able to gather the data very well. We have to work together, the entire, professionals in the industry, all the necessary people that are building things together. I hope I'm going to be able to talk a bit more about what we're doing with the state government as well. But it is important for us to note that data is worth more than gold. At this point, I'd like to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taufik. I'm happy you refer to the present situation in the country, wherein if we have gotten the data in one source, it will have helped the government in its operation at present. Who has a data on the number of carpenters in Nigeria? Who has a data on number of artisans in Nigeria? That makes it difficult for the sharing of palliative. We don't have information. We don't have data. So put in one document. So we commend NMRC for what you are doing.
The world, and indeed our country Nigeria, is at war with a ravaging virus, COVID-19. At Revolution Plus Property, we understand the impact of this pandemic on the society and how important it is for us to come together in unity. To ease the effect of the pandemic, we made available relief materials to vulnerable communities. Thanks to you, our esteemed customers and partners, Revolution Plus Property is touching lives through you. We also must all continue to adhere to safety measures and precautions by washing our hands regularly with soap and running water, using alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Always maintain social distancing. If you must go out, wear a face mask and avoid crowded places. If you suspect anyone with the COVID-19 symptoms, call the NCDC. This message is brought to you by Revolution Plus Property.
To the quality, to the functionality of the properties, everything that they've done shows you that this is the top tier of luxury real estate at an affordable price.
Now there's more than enough reason for you to visit www.thehavenhomes.com today.
I just want to live there.
Haven Homes. Home is where the art is.
I just want to live there. A Haven home will be my own. So brother, come live there. Come live at Haven home.
I love it. So, how's everything?
Aha! I see what's wrong.
What?
The wall doesn't match your elegance.
Then we must do something about it right away.
At Royal Ceramics, we offer you a wide range of beautiful wall and floor tiles designed specially to fit your lifestyle.
So, what do you guys think?
Thank goodness we changed to tiles.
I agree.
Like mother, like daughter.
Let me now go to South Africa to meet Kesia to tell me, Center for Affordable Housing Finance, of which you are the executive secretary and the founder, has been partnering Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company in promoting a data agenda for housing. What does this mean? And what will he do for the sector and for Nigeria? Kesia Ross.
Thank you very much, Festus, and thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to have this conversation with colleagues in Nigeria. It's really very interesting, and I have to say that just from the perspectives already made today, I'm so impressed by the level of attention that Nigerians are placing on this issue of data and information. From the outside, we look, and Nigeria is a very big country with an enormous population and with backlog figures that almost become meaningless. When you talk about 20 million backlog, you can't even touch that. And so really understanding the nuance within those big numbers is critically important. We believe that data is critical market infrastructure for housing in the same way as roads or power lines, and that a key constraint that undermines investment and participation in the housing sector is that the players, whether in the public sector or the private sector, don't understand or don't have access to the parameters within which they must work. So if they're thinking about a housing backlog figure of 20 million units, there's a lot of detail inside there that gets lost if we aren't able to actually interrogate that number and bring it down to, as was said already, house type and size and so on, but also place, neighborhood, street, where data is needed and where housing is needed and what kind of housing and so on, and who would contribute to that, the whole value chain of activity. And the approach that CAF has been taking, and we've been delighted to be working with NMRC on this, is that if we agree that market intelligence and data is that fundamental market infrastructure, that you can't have a housing market if you don't have the data. The basis for that is that with that data, you begin to create a level of market confidence so that individual players, a bank or a building materials supplier or Dangote Cement, any player along the housing value chain would begin to be able to scope out their understanding of the role that they can play in the housing sector. And when there's data, they can become increasingly confident about the role they play and where they can target their efforts. And that makes them interested. So then it stimulates market interest. And with that interest, they then say, well, where can we place our money? And where is there an opportunity for us to invest? This is also the case for the state governments, for the national government, the state governments, and even local authorities and so on, so in the public sector. And once they start making investments, whether it's at a project level or at the macro level, that stimulates a level of market activity. And when you have that market activity, there is information that can be tracked. And that's what's so important about what RDAN is doing as well, is that you can start to track market performance. And when you're tracking market performance, so the impact of a particular investment led to how many units being built and what was the return that was delivered to the investor. And then what does that tell us about the health of the sector and the smooth process through the value chain? And once you've got market performance, that then leads that cycle again, and then you've got market confidence again. So data is a way of shining a light on an opportunity and a series of opportunities and helping people better understand the role that they play in that. And when you've got especially a society as broad and diverse as Nigeria's, you really want to bring in all the players, the public and the private sector together so that they can engage with one another in service of their common goal. So our data agenda is in principle for that goal, is that we want to build the market infrastructure. But we're also aware that data gets produced by so many different players and in so many different ways, and oftentimes it doesn't align. So you have different impressions, and how do you create a coherence? And this is, I think, what's so important about what the work that's happening in Nigeria at the moment, is to create this coherence between data sets. So we can say on the one hand that there is, we often think if we want data on demand side, we would go and do a survey. And that's an expensive way of gathering data. It's particular to the households involved. and is probably a fairly blunt instrument to, unless it's targeted to a very narrow question, to understanding. So it's useful, but it doesn't go as broad as we would require, and it's an expensive one to collect. There is a lot of macroeconomic data that exists that should be collected by the central bank, or is collected, and then is not shared. And oftentimes the problem with that data is that it's not sufficiently disaggregated to local place, or you may have a number, for example, the percent of GDP contribution by construction, but you haven't been able to disaggregate that yet to say, well, what kind of construction, whether it's residential or commercial, industrial. And then there's a lot of administrative data, which is produced by every single company across Nigeria that's working somewhere along the housing value chain or working in the financial sector, as well as data that's produced within the public sector in relation to, for example, services charges or building plan approvals, all of that. Data that just gets generated through the course of business, but isn't shared publicly. And what the data agenda is trying to do across the continent, the African continent, and then in particular in Nigeria in this case, is to identify all those sources of data, whether they're survey, macroeconomic, administrative, and how do we bring them together to serve our housing questions. So I'll just go very quickly to just conclude around this, but what we've done with the data agenda most recently is we've undertaken a data audit of the data environment within Nigeria, and what we split up a series of indicators, 91 headline indicators, 202 indicators broadly representing the housing sector, and defining it by the housing construction value chain link, looking at land assembly, acquisition, bulk infrastructure. In the second category, data on housing construction, then data on sales, transfer, and rental, then data on maintenance and ongoing improvements, and then data on the social and economic infrastructure. So those 5 broad categories, and we have a number of indicators in each. We've then explored within Nigeria where the indicators that we have defined, and those would be basic, just so you can get to grips with what's happening in the housing sector, where we can source that data. And the report and the work is still in draft form, but it will be completed shortly. And we've evaluated the data we were able to collect in terms of its credibility. Is it believable? Is it accessible? Can it actually be accessed by a regular person on the value chain, or how do you find it? Is it temporal? Does it relate to is it current or is it old data? And is it collected regularly or so long ago? And then coverage, does it cover the breadth of the country and the breadth of the issue within that particular indicator? And in looking at that, we're starting to come up with an evaluation of the thickness of the data that exists. And what we're hoping is that will then be something that we will share back to the NMRC, and then also the National Real Estate Data Collation Management Program, which I think is such an important initiative, and then work with those bodies to support the lobbying to get access to the data where there's missing indicators. And the bulk of the missing indicators relate to data that should be held at the moment by the state. And that would be the central bank, the Ministry of Finance, the Deeds Registry, Land Administration divisions, whether at the national or at the local level. We are very excited to share this, and then we look forward to working with partners within Nigeria to really, we would add our voice to your conversation about improving the data environment.
Thank you, Kesia. Thank you so much. We are very happy to see your partnership with NMRC. We in Abuja International Housing Show have been partnering you for 3-4 years now. And we are proud to be your advocate partner in Nigeria. We will continue to do things that will promote the interest of Africa housing. So I'm pleased to hear what you are doing with NMRC. Now I want to go to Roland. Dr. Roland Igbinoba, are you with us? Dr. Roland, I observe your network is giving you problem. Are you with us? Dr. Roland Igbinoba.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. As a private sector,
I can hear you.
I found that you have done so much in the area of data, market survey, in the last many years in this country. And a lot of people know you for this. Please tell us why you are doing all those markets, the housing market. What really are your objectives? And to what extent have you achieved those objectives? Is there any help you need?
Thank you very much, Barrister Festus, and thank you again for having me on the program. Like you rightly said, Pricing Housing Company was set up as a real estate advisory outfit, but focusing largely using our data and data sets. Now, we have focused on a few of those states in the country, Lagos, Abuja. Recently, we did River State, which is for the city of Port Harcourt, and then we also did Ogun State. Now, basically, in terms of objectives and why we're doing this, we realize that without data, just like the other panelists have said, without data, it's like oxygen for anyone who is doing any business, okay? So what we decided to do is to kind of dimension the supply and demand side of things in the market, okay? So we started off with just doing in 2009, we just writing state of the market housing report.
Dr. Egbagbe?
Yeah, with you.
Dr. Egbagbe, good afternoon. How is Jos today?
Jos is very peaceful. The weather is beautiful. It's very sunny. And it's good to be with you all the way to South Africa and Lagos and Abuja. God bless you. We are fine.
You have been at the forefront of promoting housing off-takers profiling in the country. What are the major challenges you have been facing in obtaining information from off-takers in Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you, Festus. I'm really very excited to be with all of you. Thank you. God bless you, Mba and Chima and all of you. My major challenge really is the fact that the private sector seems to be neglected and pushed to the backstage. This private sector is being pushed to the backstage. And I want to say this without any offense at my big government friends and my big institutional friends. Value chain, like you know, for since 2013, we've been doing a lot of off-takers affordability and mortgage capacity surveys across the country. We were supported by GIZ, the German government collaboration agency, and we did a lot of work in Plateau State from 2013, 2014. We did a lot of work in Niger State, and we did a lot of work also in Ogun State. In fact, in Ogun State, our off-takers data was used by the Ogun State Housing Corporation to construct a target-oriented housing estate called Verifiable. My good friend, architect Jumoke, a great lady, she was then the GM. She can brief you on that. We've also done a lot of work with the off-takers themselves. We work with the Trade Union Congress, and we have data, off-takers data on about 14 states as we speak now. We are written to right from 2014 when we first met to Konjo-Iweala, the then Minister of Finance and coordinating Minister of the Economy. We proposed to her a national off-takers affordability profiling and mortgage capacity evaluation, because my experience I built a large estate, 500 units plus, in Bauchi State of Nigeria. And it was a PPP program funded by Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, several billions of naira. And we built at very low prices, only to discover that the civil servants could not afford the houses. So there was a mismatch between what we built and the pocket capacity of the off-takers. I'm a PhD, like you know, student in social medicine, and I did a lot of work in data-driven, health intervention in Russia. So I discovered that if we don't do the same with housing, we will be in trouble. Just like Kesia said, data is like critical infrastructure. It's as solid, in fact, more solid than the physical ones, because without the data, you would have a mismatch. And if you have a mismatch, for example, in Nigeria, we talk about the deficit of 15, 16, 20 million. Umba has taken it today to almost 30-something million. And yet, there are a lot of estates that are not occupied in this country. They have been built, they're not occupied. That is the problem. So I came into the industry since 2013 with a mindset for off-takers, affordability-driven, and data-driven housing solutions. Okay? My next question was that how will the off-takers fund their housing? I discovered that mortgage would be the best way to fund them. I'm not a mortgage banker, even though I've done a lot of work in financial engineering. So I decided to take mortgage, put it on one side, take the off-takers' desires on the other side, and did structured my off-takers' data work. If you can go to our website, it's free for now, ngnhomes.ng. You will discover that that website is structured to help any off-taker in Nigeria to quickly evaluate his own off-taker's affordability status and its mortgage capacity. It is a free service for now. If you want to get a more detailed report, then you can pay token agency fees. Okay, but right now it's a free service because mortgage literacy, home ownership literacy is very low in Nigeria. A lot of people, book for houses they can't afford. A lot of mortgage banks don't know what off-takers can afford in terms of even the houses they want to buy. A lot of developers don't know what kind of houses to build for what kind of pocket capacity. So my challenges have been more of a non-collaboration from the government agencies that ought to support us with some level of funding, with some level, not even too much funding, logistic support. I heard my good friend Chime say that they're giving off-takers affordability studies to 2 government-supported agencies. Whereas right now, as I speak with you, our off-takers affordability strategy has been adopted by FMBN. Our software, which is a customized version of ngnhomes.ng, has been installed in FMBN. So we are rolling out to start a massive national off-takers based on the NHF contributors. So in conclusion, in this my first intervention, I want to state that the private sector should be brought into the center because we are more sustainable. We are profit-driven. We are not playing the game of talk. Data is big business anywhere in the world. So when you make it too government-driven, you remove the profit element which drives entrepreneurship. You remove the profit element which allows people like us who have invested almost a decade of our lives in this kind of business. You make it unattractive. So I suggest to these beautiful panelists and our listeners all across the world to look more at how to support credible private sector data analysts and data organizations who have spent time over the past almost 10 years value chain my company. I'm not trying to promote my company or myself. I've done this because of the need. If we don't have a proper data-driven value chain based
Thank you, Dr. Egbagbe.
Affordable housing delivery system. Yeah, that's my mission. Let's support more the private sector.
Thank you, Dr. Egbagbe. Thank you so much. You have all done the first round, and now through the first round, you have established the importance of data. We all know now that data is very crucial, it's very important, and without having data, no serious government intervention can make impact. We have all agreed on that. Now, Dr. Egbegbe raised an issue there that private sector, government sector. Keisha, let me start from you. What should be the role of private sector? This is the round 2. This time around, you are just to spend 2 minutes, please. What should 2 minutes, please? 2 minutes, please. What should be the role of private sector in this assignment of data collation, data production in Nigeria?
2 minutes, sure. Sharing. I think sharing is a critical issue, and we need there is a breadth of data that is needed in order to make the market move, and then there is data that can lead to more detailed investment decisions. And as Dr. Egbegbe said, you can have those 2 different levels: data that's freely available and data that's proprietary and that you can derive a return from. But where that line is quite critical, because in order to actually stimulate market activity, you need enough for the other participants to see that there's an opportunity there. For example, there are property websites that collect data all the time where people want to sell their properties online. To make that data available in a summarized format oftentimes is something that those property websites don't consider, they don't think about. And yet in a summarized manner that says that this is the depth of demand, or this is the depth of what's being offered through this online property website, begins to give other market players a way to feel the market. And I think that the private sector would do well to do some investment into how to actually share their data publicly for free, a significant amount of it that would stimulate market interest and activity, and then still have where what we sell is that where we actually put additional value to it. And that's just regular practitioners. Then there are the analysts in the private sector who would also be able to engage in more detail. But what I would really like to see is that the baseline data that's available in the public domain is raised higher, so that that which becomes sold is actually that which takes a lot more energy to interrogate and to analyze. So it's the analysis that gets sold, but the data itself is made available. If I can just say 10 more seconds, Festus, that does not obviate the need for the government to provide access to the data that it's collecting in any event from the private sector. Data from the central bank, from the deeds registries, that data is critically needed as well. And the private sector could collect that and present it in usable formats for the market to work.
So much, Keisha. Now let's go back to Savio Goshukushime. You are the chairman of this National Real Estate Data Collection, and we keep seeing people working on different projects that are housing data related. My first question to you: what are you doing to bring all these people together and work as one front to solve a problem that will be affecting our country, which we need to solve now? We need to know, what do you have in mind? Joshua is talking of one thing, Roland has said something, and I'm very privileged to have some other people who have told me they are profiling cooperative, those who have told me they are being off-taker. We want to know, as in your capacity as the chairman of National Real Estate Data, what is in your mind? What is in your plan on this? Yes. That is one. Don't go, please. Don't go, please. Don't go. Don't answer me now. We also like to know, should housing developers be concerned with the data production process? The recent development from CBN says developer must bring their off-takers detailed before they can have any access to funding. That is a new development, and that is very great. Meaning we are changing the thinking to a new level of not just building the houses, but before we start building the houses, we want to know those who want to buy the houses. So we want to know question 2 from you. Do housing developer, estate developer, be concerned with data production process? That is for you.
Thank you so much, Festus. Any developer what is sourced should be able to do a proper feasibility before engaging in development. From 2005, I was a consultant to Federal Mortgage Bank. Before 2 years after, in 2007, I now became a developer. So my background is in consultancy. But before I go into that in detail, I'd like to appreciate what Kesia said. She mentioned the issue of non-alignment of data. And I was embarrassed in 2016 when 2 ministers from Nigeria went to the Global Housing Finance Program in Washington, D.C., World Bank, and they were on the podium presenting 2 sets of data concerning Nigeria. That was one of my worst days as a Nigerian. It was quite embarrassing. So what we are talking about is not individual interest. We as a nation will be taken more seriously if we can have one set of data agreed upon by everybody. All the key desk officers in the various organizations participated in the process of collecting the data and can therefore vouch for its authenticity. And that is the basic element that led to the creation of the Nigerian Real Estate Data Collection and Management Program. Now, it is important to note that this underlying assumption helps us to be able to share the data, have confidence in the data, and be able to plan with that data. The issue of whether the private sector should be involved, let me say clearly that 2 critical private sector institutions are involved, and that is the real estate developers who are operating on the supply side, and then the Mortgage Bankers Association of Nigeria who are operating on the demand side. They are private sector entities. The Building Material Producers Association of Nigeria, they are private sector entities. Some few years ago, I was supposed to do a 300 housing unit estate. I decided to profile all the staff of the University of Nigeria free of charge to be able to know how many of them can afford the estate that I want to develop. So it is a very costly exercise for any genuine developer to be able to get this data concerning the off-takers. I'm happy that the CBN has now made it mandatory that if you are making a proposal, you should be able to let us know that you have a capacity within the given area for people to absorb the number of houses that you are trying to develop. And that calls for the issue of data. I have come to know that we are having a paradigm shift from building and selling to selling beforehand and then building, so that you are sure that you reduce the transaction time on the particular project that you are involved in. Furthermore, it is critical to know that, like Kesia mentioned again, sharing is so important. What we did in asking Federal Mortgage Bank and Family Homes Fund to be the anchor, the word we used was anchor, not that they are alone. We as Nigerian Real Estate Data Collection and Management Program as a whole will be involved in the process. That is why we have National Bureau of Statistics. They could have as well claimed that they should be on their own, after all, by the national makeup. The National Bureau of Statistics is supposed to be in charge of data concerning every aspect of statistics for the nation. But they were able to agree because they saw that what we are trying to do is not just about data, but getting the buy-in and participation of critical stakeholders so that they can funnel their data need into one area. And that is what I'm appealing to everybody, every institution. Truly, within your capacity, you can do it alone. Within your capacity, you can go ahead and get your data. But it will be more better for us as a nation if we work together collaboratively. It will reduce the cost of transaction on the data. It will get the buy-in of the stakeholders who are involved in collecting this data. It will reduce the stress upon the institutions or even individuals who will have to give multiplicity of questionnaires at every other time. Now, that is why we're asking, for instance, Central Bank of Nigeria or the Office of the Presidency, if they're going to intervene in the housing sector, there are 4 critical areas they need to intervene in. 2 of them are in the area of 1, institutional capacity development. They should strengthen the capacity of various institutions that are playing in the value chain of housing. Number 2, they must enhance the capacity to have data. Like Dr. Joshua mentioned, building close to 500 beautiful houses, I'm aware of his challenge in Bauchi without data led to that crisis. And I'm happy that he has gotten in, and that has spurred him, and he's doing a very good work. In the value chain is doing a very beautiful work. But we have to move from a government that is not interested in data to a government that is becoming interested in data to the level where people can now pay for data. Unfortunately for us, most people are not interested to pay anything for data without knowing that data is key. We have had a number of houses in Abuja unoccupied because of mismatch between capacity to pay and the prices of those assets that are in the market. So I think that what we need to do actually is to ensure that we work collaboratively. The anchor institutions that we have chosen that will be able to anchor these 4 areas, we are chosen based on certain criteria, including their ability to fund that aspect and also their ability to be able to have the data before. NMRC have a head start with the issue of land administration data. Federal Mortgage Bank has about 5 million people who already they have their data. It's only need to update those data, profile it, and we have 5 million people who we can now say, can they afford this type of house? So that's why we made them anchor. I'm very happy that the value chain is working with them. That is what we are going to ask the Federal Mortgage Bank. We will be able to work with 200 National Real Estate Data Commission, and at the end of the day, the issue still remains our capacity to align our data so that when we speak in various fora, we speak with one voice and with an acceptable data mindset. And that can only happen when we all get together and work at getting this data out, not minding who takes the credit. That is why what we are working at. And that is why we refuse to work only with Central Bank of Nigeria when they came to us in 2017. I was the president and I refused. I cannot work with you alone. Let's get others on board. It's not about who takes the credit. It's about doing the right thing. And that is what we are doing under the Nigerian Real Estate Data Collection and Management Program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I'm happy that you mentioned the issue of sharing as raised by Keisha Rost. Mortgage Bankers Association of Nigeria. How many mortgage did they create in 2019? Real Estate Developer Association of Nigeria. How many units of 2-bedroom did you develop in 2019? FMBN. What is the information you have? What is the data you have about people that are contributing to National Housing Fund? How many of them can afford to own a 2-bedroom? How many of them can afford to own 3-bedroom? If we don't share this information together, we are not likely to get to where we are going. So we appreciate National Real Estate Data Collection for bringing everybody together to work. But we will come back to Redam President, former Redam President, to come and tell us why. I just got the question now. Why the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing went and established another committee that had to do with housing survey. I'll be back to you very soon. Be preparing to answer that question. Now, Dr. Mike Mba, you have no other business than statistics. And I appreciate you for that. Past 18 years, you've been involved in various ministries, in various sectors of Nigeria, manufacturing, health, now in housing. My question for you this afternoon is, what are your suggestions toward a robust data collection framework for the sector post-COVID-19? What exactly are your suggestions toward a robust data collations framework for the sector post-COVID-19. We would like to know this. And if possible, you can tell me your challenges, the challenges that you experienced during the course of compiling and collecting those data that are now at the NMRC platform. We need share experience with us. Even though a good number of the stakeholders said they don't know about it, but now we have made them known and we continue to update them on what you are doing. That has become our own business, to tell people what you are doing. Tell us your experience, tell us your suggestions for the post-COVID period.
Yeah, thank you, Festus. I appreciate that question. I will start from the challenges we had when we started working under the NRE DCMP. The key thing we found, of course, which is what may have been the reason we didn't have data, is institutional capacity. And of course, interest is there because capacity can always be developed. So that was lacking, and we saw that coming together collaboratively instead of operating in silos, we could achieve more. So when you bring in, because now one of the things I need to state clearly, everybody should get, is that statistics compilation and data compilation comes with standards. Just like Kesia has said, that there is a lot of data that you can find at the central bank on macro. Now, those data at the macro level have standards. And so if we are going to bring in everybody on board, private sector, public sector, those standards must be maintained. And so the knowledge about these standards and how it operates was one of the lapses or challenges we found. And that was affecting institutions that are supposed to play a key role in data production for the housing sector. We are not doing their job. And so with that working together, we started sharing knowledge. Those from the MBS and the National Population Commission was bringing out issues, things that should be looked at, and everybody learned from it. And then at the same time, the expertise that exists among those who are players, operators, businessmen in the housing sector came to be, because they were saying, oh, this is what we expect. Will not tell you, oh, this is how we can aggregate it and get that information. Even if we are going to get it from macro variables, they can tell you, oh, this is a macro variable that you can actually use as a proxy for that. So the issue of that institutional capacity was a major challenge. And of course, funding was a more critical challenge because the NRE EDCMP activities was like a goat that is owned by everybody, and then it suffers from hunger. So that was why we had to adopt the model of giving anchor to various institutions to enable them execute whatever data that is required for the sector. And so going forward, post-COVID, of course, when you say post-COVID, we're already entering post-COVID because soon the economy is already open. We need to sustain this collaborative effort. Now, because it comes with strong benefits. We can't, if we allow everybody to just operate in silo, just like the question you are proposing to ask the Reverend Chibe, where the ministry is setting up another committee to have this. So we found what was done by the ministry, by NMRC before we started the collaboration, was that everybody will come and then you do pockets of states. But what we did under the program, the NRE DCMP program, was to make sure that every state data is presented. Every data that we must collect must represent all the states in Nigeria. Now, to say something about what Kesia did, they said about how expensive it is. We know it's expensive, but we are looking at, when it comes to Nigeria, policy making is in 3 tiers. including of course, the political power to do it, starting from the local government to the state government and to the federal government. There is a way we will just work with macro data. It will only be the federal government that looks at it, the central bank looks at it, but the state governments that are supposed to take decisions. I tell you, one of the statistics that I'm looking at here, we compiled in the NRD CMP, you'll see that in Q2 2018, a total of 1.9 million applications were made, and of course, it gives all the agencies that are supposed to interface with the states the data they need to talk to the states and say, this is what needs to be done. The same thing applies to when you look at housing construction. Okay, for example, in 2018, the real estate developers produced different types of houses, over 16,000 of them, valued at about 190 billion. Now, by state, when you distribute it, you see that some states have more than others. So when we are trying to compile data in post-weekend, released our poverty numbers and expenditure pattern of households. And we saw that in some states, the poverty level is increasing as high as 90%, close to 90%. The poverty incidence is there. And it's only when you give out the indicators. The last time that poverty deprivation of households were published, compiled by the national planning through the MBS, it showed that many of our households are deprived of decent houses, but it varies by states. So what we do in going forward should operate as a collaboration. We can't say, oh, we need to, in housing market, let's develop Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt, and it ends there. But at the same time, we have not achieved anything. We need to know what type of house do the person in Zamfara need? What type of house do the person in Meduguri need? And so on and so forth. Then secondly, that collaboration will give us the ability to have a clearing house. Okay, so when we talk about things like off-takers affordability, there are so many variants of it. Dr. Ebabe has, if you see his template, is different from the template by NMRC. Is different from the template by maybe some other developers. We need to come together and have a standardized form that will guide going forward what we need to have. And those are some of the things that this collaboration will help us to do. And of course, like the Reverend Chime said, part of what has been pushed forward to the CBN and the presidency is for institutional capacity to be built when it comes to data compilation. So that's what I think that we need to do going forward in that regard.
Thank you, Dr. Mba, Mr. Statistics. My pleasure. Mr. Data, I'm happy to have you.
The quality, to the functionality of the properties, everything that they've done shows you that this is the top tier of luxury real estate at an affordable price.
Now there's more than enough reason for you to visit www.thehavenhomes.com today.
I just want to live there.
Haven Homes. Home is where the art is.
I just want to live there. A haven home will be my own. So brother, come live there. Come live at Haven Home.
The world, and indeed our country Nigeria, is at war with the ravaging virus, COVID-19. At Revolution Plus Property, we understand the impact of this pandemic on the society and how important it is for us to come together in unity. To ease the effect of the pandemic, we made available relief materials to vulnerable communities. Thanks to you, our esteemed customers and partners, Revolution Plus Property is touching lives to you. We also must all continue to adhere to safety measures and precautions by washing our hands regularly with soap and running water, using alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Always maintain social distancing. If you must go out, wear a face mask and avoid crowded places. If you suspect anyone with the COVID-19 symptoms, call the NCDC. This message is brought to you by Revolution Plus Property.
So, how's that going?
Aha! I see what's wrong.
What?
The wall doesn't match your elegance.
Then we must do something about it right away.
At Royal Ceramics, we offer you a wide range of beautiful wall and floor tiles designed specially to fit your lifestyle.
So, what do you guys think?
Thank goodness we changed to tiles.
I agree.
Like mother, like daughter.
Dr. Roland, I need to hear from you. Dr. Ba has spoken about the need for collaboration, the need for us to be on the same page. And I have a dream. My dream is I see the housing sector giving on a monthly basis. But what I put my life, is it possible to realize that my dream of getting data, adequate data, on monthly basis in our sector during me and your whole lifetime?
So, I mean, I think a great and great speak by all the panelists for the time that I've been here. And I think that what the real estate data collection has done is a step in the right direction to try and bring everybody together. But I'll speak on a few things in terms of data. From a private sector perspective, my challenge with, or rather what I saw was a major challenge in working with the real estate data collection consortium was that it lacked funding. Okay, because it lacked funding, there was a lot of operational issues that those of us in the team had to get involved with. I think that the core of that team should continually focus on strategic issues, and they can only do strategic things if they I know that there were a bit of conversation about money movement and all of that. So for me, clearly, that was a challenge, because if you have funding, what you can then do is look for the expertise in the market and engage them. Now, engaging them means that they know that this is not just for profit. You know, they can actually do whatever engagement that they are giving at cost, rather than thinking that they want to do this as a profit since we're just starting off. But I'll tell you what I think. Another thing, okay, that I think is a major problem. It's again, data mining by our major institutions. I'll give you a typical example. 2018 and half of 2019, I was engaged by the World Bank, okay, to work with, to speak to a few of the institutional interventions that we have, just to find out what's happening in terms of mortgage and data. So I spent about 3-4 days at the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria. I spent about a day at NMRC, you know, spent some time with family home funds across the institutional interventions that we have. And it will amaze you what information that these institutions have that can help us in doing some of the things that we have spoken about here. But those data are right there, they are not mined, okay? And even the organizations are not making optimum use of those data. I couldn't remember and data that I had with KCI. Okay, so that's a major challenge that I'm saying. So organizations have data in-house. I mean, right from FMB, check the mortgage banks, okay? Now, in doing that work for the World Bank, I visited about 10 mortgage banks. So in terms of asset to liability ratio, in terms of number of mortgages, all of those transactions, it cannot be shared. Why? Because it was not funded by the required people who should fund it. Okay, so when I do my piece of work, I can only just share to say, okay, this is what it is, until we have consent to share that data. So we can keep saying we want to do data, If our institutions do not have a budget, we're going to keep having a problem. You see, and I've gone back to the experience with Lagos and Abuja, okay? Like you said in your opening, there's a dispute whether Nigeria is 17 million or not. Since 2009, we have been estimating data for Lagos. In 2016, we estimated for Abuja. Our data is what Lagos State is using today in terms of the number of housing deficits in Lagos, which was around 3 million as of 2016. For Abuja, we have put that number at around 407,000. So we've done this empirically. It's difficult to go state by state as a private sector person because you cannot sell, how much are you going to sell the report that you produce? Okay? NMRC started to support us on housing price index. Okay, we did that for a couple of times, and then recently we joined a collaboration with the Mortgage Bankers Association of Nigeria to continue the house price index. All right. Now, if NMRC wasn't supporting us in the house price index, that house price index would have been rested a long time ago. So that's what I'm saying, that what we need to do, as we come together, I think it is critical to have lines to get data, but we just need to really begin to do more work and then take it bit by bit, maybe by region, maybe by institution, and I think that will really help us. Because if you look at it really, post-COVID-19, I keep saying, what we are having post-COVID-19 is not a financial problem. It's not a financial sector risk, so to speak. It is a risk of the real economy. So it's not about the financial sector. And what drives the real economy? We know what that is. I mean, check other clients. The SMEs, the manufacturing concern, housing has a huge part to the gross domestic product in terms of the ratios to mortgages. So if we are going to be able to drive the real economies, then data becomes very, very critical. And that's why we must look at it from that perspective.
Dr. Roland Igbinoba. Dr. Roland has spoken very well, and he has said a lot about funding to get the job done properly. Let me go to Keisha Rost. Keisha Rost, I have received call messages on the need for the universities who have the capacity to be involved in data collation, data gathering, basically for the purpose of credibility, and beyond that, so that at the end of every year, we can have people who can be updating the data. Look at the case of Nigeria, where we keep talking of 18 million, 19 million, 17 million. Since I joined the sector, that's the language I'm hearing. And it's even becoming embarrassing on me myself. By the way, I don't know who got that figure. I don't know the source of that figure. That is one of the major issues that is bothering us here. Keisha Ross, what do you think should be the role of universities in joining us in data collation? What is the importance of making our data verifiable?
Goodness.
A data that somebody can carry an investigation and confirm to be true. What is the essence of data that cannot be verified or empirically tested? Can you tell us from your own experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the role of the universities is a critical issue. But perhaps in thinking about this, we should also think about fast and slow, because there is data that's moving all the time. And I think perhaps one way of defining your vision for data to be available on a monthly basis is almost to create the housing finance Bloomberg for Nigeria, right? So that you have a dashboard and that shows how things are changing on a regular basis. And for that, there's a strong technical side to that, about creating the APIs, the connection of the data sets from the one institution to the next and feeding it through and so on. And that's a technical exercise. What it means and then what implications that then has becomes a really critical issue for the universities, because they can then interrogate the data sources and they can explore that in terms of different theories or questions or particular issues that need to be studied. But that requires real communication across the sector. I'm sometimes nervous that there isn't enough dialogue between the universities and the private sector, and that the real-time activity that's happening within the private sector as it changes day to day is not something that the universities are engaging with. And yet at the same time, that real-time data that's happening so quickly, someone needs to take the time to step back and reflect on it. And what does it actually mean? And so different players in the sector will have different roles to play. I think the critical thing is to put as much as possible into the public domain, so that you can then almost crowdsource engagement with it. And then the universities are never short of questions to ask of good data sets. And once they start asking those questions, they will then interrogate whether the data is reliable. It's only in the use of the data that you can actually identify whether it makes sense within your sense of understanding of how the world itself is working, and whether it's covering the breadth. We've worked quite hard to try and create some standards, and Dr. Mba talked about that standardization. I think is really important. We've developed a tidy data protocol so that everybody, when they put data into a spreadsheet, they use the spreadsheet in the same way. That creates a level of comparability. It should also go to the kinds of questions that are how they're drafted for surveys and so on. Then we're now trying to collect a database of indicators, headline indicators and broader market indicators, that we can create some comparability also across countries. And then in that, as I said, we're evaluating it again. We need people to collect the data and share, people to curate the data that exists. Within companies, we need those companies to make sure that what they're putting into the public domain is sound and solid. And they need to do it quickly, because for many of these things, COVID-19 is an excellent example. Yesterday is already very different from today. And so there's a lot of this data needs to be updated on a very regular basis. Property market data as well, transactions and so on, definitely needed regularly. Then we need people who will reflect on that data and think about it, what it means. Something we've done in South Africa, which has been so useful, is looked at non-performing loan data over time, taken from a credit bureau, all of the data around NPLs, and then we've disaggregated it between conventional market and the affordable market to begin to test over time the impact of the global financial crisis, the impact of a fall in oil price, the impact of whatever. And all of that starts to then inform our policy going forward. So we need actors at all levels, and the academic sector definitely needs to be included in this process, as almost if you think of the value chain of data engagement from its collection through to its meaning making.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keisha. Now, I know I have seen the background now, but before I go to you, let me go to NMRC. NMRC have been championing housing data that have been acknowledged by almost all the speakers, from the chairman of the National Real Estate Data to Roland Ibinoba, and I'm also confirming that now. Kesia has said that. So, Mr. Taufik, are you with me?
Yes, I'm with you, my brother. Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes. What do you consider to be the way forward in addressing the gap and discrepancies in our housing data? And I also want you to answer it with another question. How would data availability help with COVID-19 prevention and intervention? I hope you understand the two questions.
I do. Thank you so much, my brother.
Or do you want me to put it again?
No, that's fine. I'm good. I'm good. Okay, right. Thank you. Thank you so much, my brother. It's really very interesting, listening to all the panelists. They are, like the top-notch people in the field that should actually do a good job. I mean, do justice to this webinar. So what I've heard, and which is in line with the way most of the things we've been discussing, is around sharing of data, working together, collaborative efforts, having challenges with funding and the likes. These are commonplace items that you would always find. But what's the way forward for us? The way forward is this. We should be able to come up with a very strong governance structure and perhaps an SPV that will include both the public and the private sectors. And I'm looking at the kind of structure we already have with NREDCMP on one hand, with the collaboration efforts with NMRC, FMBN, CBN, and all the other parties and the private sectors that are already kind of engaged. And let's come together and see how we can really form a solid SPV that would help us to have what is called a provenance. Provenance is a single source of truth in terms of data that will be able to do the analysis and present to something that's going to make meaning for us, will be meaningful for decision-making process, for policy-making process. And I'm looking at it from the viewpoint of the growth of data to information to knowledge and then to wisdom. And these are the clear things that we should always be able to establish very clearly in terms of how we move forward. Now, if we're able to establish this very clearly, and we all come together to support the SPV, whether as shareholders or stakeholders or token holders in the currency, be the way we should be going. I think, once we have this kind of structure, to be able to respond to issues like COVID-19 becomes a lot easier, because at that point, we'll now be able to, identify the areas that would need intervention. Identifying the areas of intervention will really help us to be able to address the need when the time comes. For example, having the data about our people, know exactly where we need to put stuff. Is it going to be part of the demand, housing demand, or the housing supply? These are the areas where I believe we can really step in to play a major role. I've listened to the CAF, strategy. I've seen the issues that we have in terms of even running the NREDCMP, and I believe we should have a very strong structure with very strong governance model in place to run with the show. Bringing in the educational institutions will really help. For example, the universities. And what I believe the universities will be able to do in this respect would be to have a yearly kind of research, an ongoing research that will contribute to data collection. Well, we've got more than 50 universities. Let's imagine why we have all these 15 universities doing research every year on housing. And people are going out there in their various locations to gather data. And they're supplying the data into this SPV that we're all working together. It's going to be very fantastic. And that's what we should be looking at, working together with the universities, the polytechnics, and all the institutions to pull all of this data together into this SPV, and working together with the CAF, at the regional level for us to move forward. And I think that's where we should be going. Thank you.
That day, Mr. Dr. Off-takers profiling. I was trying to ask you,
yes,
that for you to make a successful outing in this venture that you have been doing, which some of us see as important, profiling people from one place to the other, you know what I'm saying? At least the template you have, even though we have people who are using other templates, what are the way forward for you? What are the support you need?
I think my major support is collaboration on a broader basis. We need more collaboration. For example, maybe because of the nature of our work, which is private sector driven, we have not shared enough. But from this program, listening to Kesia and everybody else speak, we are going to begin to post publicly some of our data from the different states. That's number one. Number two, we need to have more institutional backing. For example, Ugochime mentioned FMBN and Family Homes Fund, which are big government institutions. So we need to be able to work with them in a collaborative manner so that the private sector will also receive some strength and boost. And then finally, the financial issue, we've been able to raise enough funding for our work. So when we collaborate with the other agencies now, we can give our data for free and on the basic level. But we also have what we call the analytics back end and the analytics, whereby we can give developers the data they need to build to specific demographics. We can give different stakeholders analytics based on the work we are doing. So our support base is quite simple. Collaboration is the way to go. And we need to just now maybe launch a more public sharing of information. We need to share more. The work we've done, we want to start sharing more of it so that the states we have covered, people, stakeholders can see those data, and then we can move forward collaboration. I'm a member of the TWG, by the way, and like you know, the off-takers aspect has been our emphasis from 2013 and 2014. So we came into that group suggesting to them to include the off-takers aspect, which thank God they did. So the off-takers aspect is now incorporated into their former three section work. We are ready to continue with that collaboration. Thank you.
Right. To the former president, the group managing director of Copen Group. There was a question I sent to him before. I will need him to answer that question before I ask you all to say your last statement on this program today. I will have to take response to that question because I have people who have sent same messages to my phone that ask this team, why did the ministry works and housing, why did they go and establish a parallel housing survey? You see that they don't believe in them and they are part of them. Please, we need to know why, so that we that are in the media, in this kind of job, be able to tell the whole world, this is it, this is it, this is it, this is it. Sincerely speaking, I want all my friends in the media, whoever connected to this program, to note that I strongly believe in this your team. And on this your team, I continue to stay. So please tell me what happened. Is it that you people are not doing it well, or why did they have to? Why is it that they don't believe in you, or why is it that they have to go? Or what they are doing is different from what you have done? Are we hearing from you?
Thank you so much. First off, before I go into that, let me use this opportunity to deeply appreciate my colleagues trying to pioneer what we did under the Nigerian Real Estate Data Collection and Management Program was not easy at all. And I'd like to state clearly that we had 100% cooperation and sacrifice from members of the team, starting with Dr. Mike Mba of CBN. We have also Architect Yukeri Alozie of Federal Ministry of Works and Housing. Dr. Fakaye, TK is here already. And then to appreciate the sacrifice of Dr. Ibagbe, who is always there at his own sacrifice, and then also Roland. And then we have so many other people who were part of this wonderful team and sacrificed their time. They were not paid for the activities they did, but they were able to
Except me that you could not appreciate. Maybe if I've done some report against you now, you would appreciate me today. You couldn't appreciate me. Maybe I need to be on the other side with you.
For what you've done. Principally, comparability and acceptability of data is a key issue. And like Kesa had mentioned, alignment of data between institutions and sharing of data. Roland had mentioned of data that are lying waste in various institutions and could not be integrated. And also the cost reduction. These are some of the reasons why Nigerian real estate data collection is the way to go. I agree also with TK on the need for strong governance structure. And let me say this. There was a misconception by many people that Nigerian real estate data collection and management program is a creation of FEDA. It is wrong. It is a multi-stakeholder institution that all these institutions that I mentioned, 14 of them, including value chain, have equal stakeholder interests. And any other institution that comes in now is a full member and has the full right to participate. And that has to be given. We have about 16 institutions. What we do have is that we have 2 tiers of governance. The steering committee, of which I head, and which has these key institutions involved in it, and then we have the technical working group headed by Dr. Mba, and they are doing very, very great. Now, with respect to what you asked me about the ministry, let me backtrack to say that in 2015, in July, the Shelter Africa had an issue in Abuja, had a meeting, another general meeting. And at that meeting, the Minister for Power, Works and Housing, then as he was called, who is the current minister, asked the private sector to set in motion a means of getting data. He was questioning the issue of 17 million deficit. And it was part of the reason that we decided that we would work together. What they are now doing in the ministry is partly part of the thing we asked them to do. They were supposed to anchor the issue of housing condition survey. But unfortunately, they are not getting involved with CBN, who is their other anchor partner. And unfortunately also, they are not co-opting Nigerian real estate data collection in that bid. And that is creating a problem because all the gains that we have enumerated, comparability, acceptability, sharing of data, alignment of data, cost reduction, cannot be achieved under the current approach they are using. They are trying to get a consultant who will come and do all this and that. We want a consultant, but more important than a consultant, we want to make sure that the desk officers who will be using those data are part of the questionnaire formulation. Because if you ask the wrong question, you get the wrong answer. And that is why we are able, like Dr. Mba mentioned, when we started, we had out that value chain had a different questionnaire for affordability survey. NMRC had a different questionnaire for affordability survey. Some of us also who have been involved in affordability had different questionnaires. We were able to agree on what questionnaire should represent our best approach. With that agreement, the rest of the issues are history, as we say. We also made sure that all the desk officers from the various collaborating institutions were involved in the field in data mining, so that they could agree that not only the questionnaire, but the process, the approach, the collection procedures are in sync and in tandem with what they would like it to be like. So I believe that the ministry should please invite Central Bank of Nigeria, also get involved with the Nigerian Real Estate Data Collection and Management Program and work with them with a view to ensuring that, for instance, the enumeration areas we are using for what we are doing is in sync with the enumeration areas being used by the National Population Commission, so that the data we are getting is in sync with their enumeration area, how they map the whole country for population, so that when they have data that relate to housing, we can have comparison, so that you don't begin to reinvent the wheel. That is the advantage we have of having National Population Commission, of having National Bureau of Statistics involved in what we are doing. And the issue of finance has been a major problem. Most institutions want to control their vote, and that is one thing we agree with them, but we are not saying bring your vote. Anchor it, control your vote, but let us work together so that the key parameters we have set for us ourselves, comparability, acceptability, sharing, cost reduction, alignment of data, will be achieved for the Nigerian masses, for who we are all serving. Thank you.
I would have loved to ask Dr. Mba, but that question may not be good for him since he's still working with the CBN. My question would have been, will you like the CBN to fund housing data in Nigeria? Will you like it? That is one. Two, will you want private sector to be the one championing it? Or you want the government establishment to be the one championing it? I don't know if you'd like to answer this question, but I must acknowledge one fact for all the participants. The fact remains that National Real Estate Data Collection has membership of Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, has membership of Nigeria Population Commission. So some of the organizations that have the statutory responsibility of doing something related to the data have been involved in this assignment. So this brings credibility to what they are doing. The issue at stake is, how do we work together? That is why we are here today. We have agreed that the way forward is to work together as a team. Everybody go for the area of comparative advantage and make our housing data to be available in Nigeria. But the issue unsolved now is funding. What is your advice, Dr. Mike Mba?
Okay, yeah, thank you. If I have to answer those two questions simply, the answer is yes. One, CBN has been involved in funding data collection in various, for me to be involved in agriculture, in education, oil and gas, it's all about where CBN is channeling resources and efforts to for data compilation and then collection to make sure, because of course you can't run the economy if you don't understand. So we need the data more than any other person. Of course, that was what led CBN to REDAN, and CBN is ready to support that activity to any length and any level possible. It might interest you to know, and then also our participants to know, that the outcome of what the NREDCMP did in the past 3 years form the basis of the data that was provided to the governor of the central bank in coming up with the proposal for an intervention. That was the justification. The governor was provided data on the residential property that were produced they are constructed by REDAN members across the states, the approval by land administration, the off-takers affordability level, which shows that up to 80% of off-takers cannot afford the type of houses they say they want. These are some of the numbers that were shown to the governor of central bank. And then the other part, which is central bank allowing private sector to participate. Sure, in-house in CBN, there are some surveys that we allow private sector to handle. It's apart from building their capacity to also do that. Particularly, we are looking at a business model that if the housing market develops, the data collection and data generation becomes a sustainable activity and also profit making. But point is something that we should also know, that in the Nigerian setting today, public sector, when government funds data collection, it is seen as a public good and is not expected to be sold. It's not expected to be used for profiteering. That's one. Now, but government can as well agree that certain elements of data should be collected by the private sector. That is done. So even at the CBN level, when it comes to housing, part of what we are looking at, the implementation plan that CBN we are proposing to the CBN management, is that in the area of funding data and collecting data for the housing sector, there will be a framework that will allow the private sector to play a role. Of course, when you say that each developer that will come forward for funding will have a profiled off-takers, we don't expect all the developers to have the capacity to profile. They will use existing experts, just like Dr. Babe's value chain, Python, and some other that will come up or that are existing that we may not know, and to use them to profile and come up with the data. But there has to be a standard. That standard is what we're talking about, that a body like the NREDCMP that's being coordinated or collaborating by 14 agencies can now say, oh, this is the way it should go. And that will be a standard, uniform standard. And then you can now go ahead and work out the details. Just like Reverend Chibe mentioned that he did it in UNN as a developer. Well, of course, he developed the questions by himself and the indicators that he needed to collect. So, but in this case now, under the funding intervention that the CBN is working, there has to be a standard so that whoever is being outsourced as a private sector to do it will make sure that it complies with those relevant information. And of course, you discover that things like the BVM will come in, because at the end of the day, whatever that customer or that off-taker gives you will be verified that he has a bank account, and of course, every other details will follow. So the CBN is always readily available to collaborate. That's why we have been there. And even when we joined the NREDCMP, we loved it. Each time we hear, oh, Python is doing something, we said, invite Python. Value chain is doing something, invite value chain. And that's how we have been bringing in the private sector and the public sector institutions that are relevant to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have reached the end of this program, and we all have 1 minute to say our last statement on this program for today, as we have for that meeting in the next 30 minutes. I will start from Dr. Joshua Agbabe to please say his last statement on this program today.
Thank you. Thank you, my boss. I have 60 seconds, maybe lesser. Well, I want to say thank you. This has been very informative. This has been very inspiring. Even though I was a guest speaker, but I really was like a student. I have my paper and biro here. I've been writing notes from the different speakers. I'm so impressed. I'm looking forward to going to visit Kesia as soon as the lockdown is over, because I really enjoyed her very deep thoughts. Ibinoba, of course, is the professor, so that's why I don't need to praise him too much. And everybody else. Dr. Mba, thank you for your very kind comments. I have 30 more seconds. Let me just say thank you to my president, Radar President, past immediate. Before I continue, I want to just say that I agree we should share more. In fact, after this program, Festus, I'll be calling you. We're about to roll out our national off-takers affordability backbone. It's a website that is for free, and we want to quickly get to work with everybody, even on this panel. So I'll be calling you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak my mind. I've been crying over the past 10 years about how off-takers should be at the center of all construction work in housing. The developer should look at the off-takers challenge. The mortgage should look at the off-takers challenge. The construction finance should look at the off-takers challenge. Government should look at the off-takers challenge. If we can succeed in doing that, housing will continue forever and ever. Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam.
Dr. Roland Ibinoba, to say his last statement on this webinar.
Yeah. Okay, I think basically my last statement would be around the fact that how does NREDC move forward? Okay. Yes, I'm a member of the 14th consortium at NREDC, but I think something that we should start considering is ensuring that the central repository that we have created in terms of the different institutions become very active. And then also, I think today NREDC still works an ad hoc, so to speak, as an ad hoc entity. I think formalizing NREDC as the, I don't know what kind of formalized structure that would be, but working as an ad hoc team, I think is still making things slow. I think it should be that the 14 people who are involved in it should try and find a way to formalize NREDC, probably have a secretariat of which they will hire somebody to run it, and that way the activities are no longer ad hoc, okay? And then these 14 agencies can come together and give directions and guidance to whoever the person who's running the secretariat is. I just think if it keeps being on an ad hoc basis, we may not be able to. We are doing quite a lot, but we need to do more, and I think it needs to move from that ad hoc basis to a formalized structure. So that would be my thoughts on moving forward, really, in terms of data post-COVID.
Thank you, Dr. Gbinoba. I believe in your school of thought. I'm one of those people who believe that there must be a strong secretariat. When you have a strong secretariat, you can deliver. I'm operating here because I have a strong team who are restless, working 24/7. I don't stand by it. So, as we move toward post-COVID era, I support the motion that we should position national real estate data collection with a strong secretariat to drive it forward. Now, I would like to take Mr. Taufik, the NMRC, who have been supportive to data collation in Nigeria. NMRC must know that until we get results, we no get results, NMRC no work. If the MD is connected, let him be hearing. We need you to do more and more and more as far as data collation is concerned. So I hereby invite Mr. Taufik Olatiwo to please say his last statement on this webinar discussion.
Thank you very much, my brother Festus. So from NMRC, it's very clear that we are moving forward with data collation. I'm also a member on the steering committee of NRE DCMP. So we're working together, whichever way you look at it. We've got, I'm at the steering committee level, and we've got, I have other people that are part of the technical working group. So it's something that we are really watching very closely, and we want to see the success of it. On top of that, we are also driving forward the relationship with the states in terms of the modern mortgage and foreclosure law to help us be able to clearly define how to gather data from the states into the data collection program. And this is where we're going to be seeing the tension going forward, the tension between operational data and survey data, and how we're able to put standards around it based on what CAF is doing and what CBN also talked about. So these are things that we need to ensure we are able to do very, very well. With respect to the titling system and data that we're working with the state, we're also working with NIESV, that's Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers. And with them, we want to ensure that the professional body is really involved in this to ensure we have the right data, and the lawyers as well in terms of the validation. So we're looking at being able to collate and coordinate all of these activities going forward that will serve as input into what NREDCMP is going to be doing going forward. The strong governance is required. We cannot continue with the loose structure, otherwise it's going to be a remedy for failure. And that's going to be my submission. Thank you so much for putting this together. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olatiwo. Now to Keisha, all the way from South Africa. We'd like to hear your last statement on this webinar today.
I've so enjoyed this conversation and am so impressed by the level of detail and focus within Nigeria on creating a good data platform. I mean, there's still definitely a way to go, but I can see that there are all the relevant parties are interested in making this work, and so that really puts you in great stead for taking it forward. We are due to finalize our sort of high-level analysis of data availability in Nigeria. And it's just one input, but we are very keen to share this with stakeholders and to see if that's helpful in driving your advocacy programs forward. And so we'll share that, and Festus through you, I hope, so that everybody can engage. A quick comment on COVID-19. We live in houses, and so housing is so central to how we survive and exist within the context of this pandemic. And we've heard lots of commentary on this, but I think what's so important going forward, we can think about the issues relating to the risk and the quality of housing and so on. But in terms of the role of housing in the recovery process, as we start to get to the downside of the curve, and then in the long-term resilience for when other emergencies like this come forward, is so critical. And so we're learning right now so much about what kind of data we need to collect, and the urgency is very clearly in front of us through the pandemic, and we must make sure that we don't waste these lessons. Thank you very much.
Now, Reverend Shime, you'll be the last person to speak, and we head the program. I will need your statement to only be one statement. 1 minute.
Well, first of all, let me thank my colleagues on this panel for the very strong contributions. And I'd like to assure TK that strong governance structure, which is part of, is already going to be strengthened. And also Roland, that formalizing from ad hoc to standing is something that we're all going to work together with. And they have a strong secretariat. We'll work on all those and all the suggestions that have come out. Moving forward, in spite of the challenges that we have in the course, one of the things we intend to do is to use data as a means to an end. One of the things we have proposed for some time now is that any state, when we get the land administration data, any state that is not able to have ease of doing business in the issue of transaction time and transaction cost, either in land registry, either in land approval, we are going to suggest to Federal Mortgage Bank, to Federal Family Homes Fund, and to NMRC that they should stop sending money to that area, that particular state, to force them to be able to ease off, because sometimes some of these funds get trapped for 10 years. While if we had ease of doing business in these critical areas, either on the construction side or the demand side, the funds could rotate and get to other states. And that issue of using the data for advocacy is one area that some of us are looking forward to. You shouldn't invest money in a state that is not willing to make sure that that money does the work it's meant to do. And therefore, it is something that we're going to step up and ask them to no further investment in a state where the governor refuses to issue CFO, where the governor refuses to allow the stakeholders to register titles or to register it quickly. So it's not only about the data. The Nigerian Real Estate Data Collection and Management Program, we enter also into advocacy. So use the data we glean from the process to put pressure as an advocacy group to let them know the impact. And at the same time, explain to some of these stakeholders the mutually beneficial outcome that could be their portion if they are able to improve on some of those observed lapses in the environment. So I believe that we have just started and we have a determination to take it to the next level. Appreciating the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, Federal Mortgage Bank, and NMRC and REDA, which were the anchor institutions that funded the first set of operations, and Central Bank that funded the first set of operations, with some of us who dip hand into our pockets. The aim has been achieved. We have now brought sensitization on the table of what can happen if we can all work further together. And I'm sure that is the direction which we're all heading to. And within the next few weeks, you're going to hear from us when we meet under the steering committee and TWG on how to move it forward, and all the relevant stakeholders and those who have seen, who are listening to us, and the key government institutions will let you have our idea, including Central Bank in particular, what we think we should be doing based on what we have noticed from what we have done as Nigerian Real Estate Data Collection and Management Program. Thank you, and God bless you.
We have come to the end. We have come to the end of today's webinar discussion on the subject, what has data got to do with housing sector in Nigeria? I want to appreciate all our very important guest speakers from South Africa, Asia Rust, Taufik Olafinwo from NMRC, Ugoshuku Shime, representing Redam, Dr. Roland Ignoba from Pising, and Dr. Mike Umba of the Central Bank of Nigeria. You have all done well today. We want to appreciate you very well. And we also appreciate all our stakeholders. Professor Yagete, I can see you there. You have been there for almost 1.5 hours. I saw your questions and some other notable practitioners who have been connected to us for more than 1 hour now. My colleagues in the media, I cannot close this program without appreciating you. I want to thank everyone for making this a successful program. I want to also appreciate Real Estate Developer Association of Nigeria, Nigerian Mortgage Finance Company, Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, Central Bank of Nigeria, African Union of Housing Finance, Value Chain, and PISI. They are all great institutions. The advocacy for the need for housing data will continue to be sustained by us on all our platforms. We will continue to do the job and ensure that we put some of you on your toes to deliver for the sector. So thank you, everyone, and God bless you. Bye for now. Cheers. Bye-bye.